Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Coming at you like I love to do every day, every weekday, over the national airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Howdy! By the way, the Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by mycomputercareer.edu. Training for a better life. Now, obviously, in case you didn't know, you should know since you listen to me every day. You know you can catch me right here on ESPN Radio. Check your AM, FM listing nearest you in over 250-plus markets across the United States of America. Plus, you can catch me on Sirius XM Channel 80. Plus, you can catch me on ESPN Television. I got to tell you something. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. This is a beautiful, beautiful day. I must say, as you think about the things that transpired on a football Sunday, I'll get into that Jay Gruden firing at 5 a.m. this morning in just a few minutes. Because I know news. And obviously when you're talking about news, looking at my man JC, looking at my man Jonathan Winthrop through that screen right there, when you're talking about the news, obviously the Jay Gruden firing is significant news, particularly coming out of the nation's capital. The thing is, though, I got other things on my mind first. I watched those Cowboys yesterday. I got to tell you something right now. It's interesting watching what's transpiring right before our very eyes. A couple weeks ago, all you Cowboy fans out there, the world over, not just in the South where my buddies reside, Jerry and Stephen Jones, but also all across the world, all across these United States of America. There's Cowboy fans everywhere. Wear your stars on your hats, your baseball caps, the jerseys. Talk about how you going to win the championship, Super Bowl championship. Been 24 years and counting it, but that's neither here nor there. We looked at the Cowboys over the first 3 games of this season, and we said, I'm mighty proud of those boys. Look at them go. They beat up on the New York Giants, led by Eli Manning. Then they turned around and went against the Washington Redskins. We see what happened there. And then after that, they went up against those Miami Dolphins. Just stop the presses. What a formidable football franchise they are. I guess we're thinking a little bit differently right now, right? It's just been a couple of weeks since that time. If you recall, ladies and gentlemen, there's something called Thursday Night Football. You listening to me, JC? Are you listening to me? There's something called Cowboy fans watching Thursday Night Football. And at that particular juncture, we watched the Cowboys 3-0 undefeated. And we said, hey, you know what? Cowboys, if the Eagles lose that Thursday Night Football game to those Green Bay Packers, and we turn around and we beat those Drew Brees-less New Orleans Saints, led by Teddy Bridgewater, we'd be at 4-0. They'd be at 1-3. We'd be 3 games ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles in that NFC East, and by golly, gosh darn it, we'd had a division. It'd be lock, stock, and barrel. That's where we gonna have it. And here we sit, just a mere 10 days later. You hear me, Jonathan Winthrop? I'm talking to you too, buddy. Just 10 little days later. That's a week and a half for those of you who don't understand the difference. Just 10 little days later, we sit here, Cowboys, losers of 2 in a row, Eagles, winners of 2 in a row, and lo and behold, we got a stalemate right at 3-2 at the top of the NFC East division. And suddenly we look at those Cowboys. Dak Prescott, not looking too smart right now that you didn't sign that extension. Not looking too smart right now. I reckon that Dak Prescott being out there, putting himself on the line, putting that health on the line, only making $2 million a year this season, I reckon somebody need to tell Dak Prescott, hey, wait a minute there, buddy. You might want to sign that contract extension as opposed to being focused on setting the market. You might want to take a couple of $1 million less just to make sure you get 30+ million. You mean you can break a leg, twist the ankle. You can do a lot of things on that football field, especially with guys like that dude, Zadarius Smith. Beautiful last name, by the way. Coming right at you. Might want to do something about that. Preston Smith, too. Another beautiful last name. He was all over the place yesterday, too. Might want to do a little something about that. Ezekiel Elliott had 62 yards rushing, a 62-yard rushing performance, even though he averaged about 5 yards a carry. Here's the bottom line. Might want to do a little something about that. Amari Cooper had 226 yards receiving, yet you still lost. Might want to do a little something about that. Dak Prescott, 3 interceptions. Might want to do a little something about that. Jason Garrett's your coach. Kellen Moore is your first-year offensive coordinator. Suddenly you be a little bit humble. Jason Garrett out there earning penalties for bad behavior in the Fifth of Mouth, cussing at officials like he's never been known to do. I'm wondering about those Cowboys right now. All you Cowboy fans everywhere, you all right? Are you okay? I only got one thing to say about this, other than the fact that Green Bay's defense looks for real, other than the fact that Aaron Rodgers is still that bad man even when he don't have to be, other than the fact that their running back, Aaron Jones, is something special when he wants to be, evidently against those Cowboys. At the end of the day, what we can't ignore, what we must pay attention to, is that those Cowboys seem like some of you out there might have been a bit premature, wouldn't you say? I guess you'll finally get it together after all, recognizing the fact that indeed you haven't arrived. But I got some news for you. Old Stevie A here for you. You know why? Because Stevie A loves you. Not just the kids. He loves you too. He sure does. He sure does. 888 say ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live. It's Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Now, little old cowboy Stephen A. will be back in just a little while. For the moment, got to get to some news. As you all may remember, last Monday, I came on the air and I said to you that Jay Gruden would be fired today. I said he would be fired the day after they lost to the New England Patriots. They would lose to the New England Patriots. It would be in a lopsided fashion, at which time the Redskins would fire him as head coach of their franchise. Well, it came to fruition. Patriots won 33-7 yesterday. Jay Gruden looked like a lost puppy. Had players in the locker room crying on his behalf because they love him so. Nevertheless, the record didn't show it. 35-49-1 as head coach of the Washington Redskins franchise, at which time, under the stewardship of Jay Gruden, on Daniel Snyder, the owner for the Washington Redskins, on his staff, once upon a time under Jay Gruden with Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Matt LaFleur. All three head coaches are doing damn good jobs in the National Football League at this particular juncture. Sean McVay just finished going to a Super Bowl. Excuse me. Kyle Shanahan has the San Francisco Giants undefeated heading into Monday Night Football today against the Cleveland Browns with Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. And Matt LaFleur, courtesy of the Packers beating the Cowboys yesterday, are 4-1 on the season. having beaten Chicago, having beaten Minnesota, having beaten the Dallas Cowboys in 3 of their first 5 games. So we have to recognize the fact that if you're Daniel Snyder, what happened? What really, really happened? You know what? You hired the wrong damn man as the coach, and you kept the wrong damn man on the job for far too long. If we're really, really being honest, the fact of the matter is, one could easily argue the only reason Jay Gruden had the head coaching job in the nation's capital to begin with is because he had a beautiful last name. Because anytime you think of Gruden, you think about one man, and that would be John Gruden, who's a Super Bowl champion as a coach, who's now the $100 million man plus for the Oakland Raiders, who walked into London yesterday with the world telling him and everybody else that Khalil Mack was going to get the best of them because John Gruden unceremoniously booted him out of Oakland. And what does John Gruden and the Oakland Raiders do? Albeit without Mitchell Trubisky, they ended up beating the Chicago Bears. That's what we saw. That's what we got. It is what it is. And that's that. John Gruden and the Oakland Raiders, one could argue, have proven that they're heading in a forward direction, that they're doing the kind of things that build a winning culture. And you got to give John Gruden some love for that. Jay Gruden deserves no such thing. Jay Gruden, I don't know the man personally. I'm certainly not knocking him personally. And I'm not going to give any credence to the reports about laziness or incompetence or not the want it factor. I don't know Jay Gruden. I'm in no position to judge him in that fashion. But I will tell you this. His record certainly exemplifies that. Now, they're like 1-11 or 1-12 since Alex Smith went down. And by the way, Alex Smith, who suffered that nasty leg injury against the Houston Texans last year at FedEx Field, I don't know why he and his lovely wife would pick the Patriots game as a game to show up at. I don't know why they wouldn't just stay the hell home rather than to see that beat down. But nevertheless, they were in attendance for the game yesterday, and they watched the New England Patriots run roughshod over the Washington Redskins, and as a result, the Redskins get smashed. Jay Gruden's dismissal was a foregone conclusion. Most people knew that it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. People were surmising, would it be at the end of the season? Would it be at the halfway mark, et cetera, et cetera? I reported a week ago it would go down today. That's what the hell happened. My point is, I feel sorry for the man from the standpoint that I don't wish firing on anybody. I want a person to continue to get paid and have the ability to feed their families. And I'm quite sure that's not going to be a problem for Jay Gruden. The flip side to it, however, is that he's a man one could easily argue should have never been a head coach to begin with, or at the very least should have been relieved of his duties years ago, so you could have kept McVay, Shanahan, or LaFleur to be the head coach of this franchise, rather than keeping him on board at the expense of losing all 3 of those guys. But Daniel Snyder elected not to do that, and as a result, he's been vilified. He's constantly vilified as not the greatest owner in the world, and we get all of that. And in the end, what it comes down to is that they had to move in a different direction because they really, really had no choice. Plain and simple. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. That needed to be what was said. Now I want to move on to something that some would consider a bit dicey. I do not. Reading, apparently for those of you who didn't hear the news, there's a big controversy going on involving the Houston Rockets. Daryl Morey, there's obviously protests taking place in Hong Kong. China's regime, their power in place, had a problem with a tweet that Rockets general manager Daryl Morey sent out in support of those protesters.